Okay, welcome to Sec 1 Geography, Chapter 5. For this video, we will be looking at first portion of Chapter 5, Spatial Distribution of Tropical Rainforests. Okay, so in this particular chapter, you will need to do a few of these important things, right? We'll be looking at describing characteristics of tropical rainforests. We'll be looking at describing distribution of tropical rainforests. We'll also be looking at describing the conditions for growth of tropical rainforests and finally explaining what some of these adaptations that have the tropical rainforests have evolved over the years to deal with the conditions that they live in and to try and thrive in that environment. So within this area here on tropical rainforest, this entire chapter here, we will be looking at the entire wing on tropical rainforest on the left hand side of this flowchart. There's an accompanying portion on mangroves that we will not be dealing with in this pre end of year season. Okay, so the mangrove component, we've actually snipped it out. It is a post exam module, right, that we traditionally run later on in the year. So we'll be looking at rainforests, and like we mentioned earlier, where are they found, what are some of these specific characteristics, and what are these adaptations that they have. Okay, so let's start with what is natural vegetation first, right? So natural vegetation is everything that you find in the world, okay, that exists in terms of plant life without human interference. Okay, so no human intervention, right, is the natural type of vegetation that we see around. So what can affect this basically is climatic conditions. So you need to let's think about upper primary science again, right? Once again, upper primary science teaches you about plants and what do you need for plants generally to thrive. You need a lot of sunlight and you need a lot of water. So these components are your weather elements, and in terms of the long-term look of an area, when you look at the climate of the area, it will determine the type of vegetation you can find. So I give an example. One of the core climate types that we will be dealing with later on, climatic types, is the tropical equatorial climate. Okay, so this where it's a type of climate that you are very familiar with. It's what Singapore experiences. So when looking at this particular type of climate, right, what are we looking out for then? What do you generally experience when you're living in Singapore, right? So you have large amounts of rainfall, large high temperatures, okay, throughout the year. Okay, the range in temperature will not be very big. The range in rainfall will also largely, every month you will have rain, and there will be some variance, but the variance tends to be not that significant, except for at the end of the year where we do suffer a little bit of a spike in rainfall. But we have high rainfall every month of the year, and that's something of a given in Singapore because of our experience with the tropical equatorial climate. Now, what does this mean in terms of plants then? When you look around at the plants around Singapore, especially the natural areas where you have your forest reserves and all, you have tropical rainforests. Trees that are really large, really tall, and really, really green all the time. Okay. Well, later on you will realize that there are green, there's green and there's green, and there's shades of different shades of green. But largely, when we're looking at this intensity of rainfall and this intensity of sunlight, you will have a lot of vegetation. Okay. On the reverse, if you are in a very cold place, very low temperatures, very little sunlight, very little rainfall, actual rainfall, whether it's very hot or very cold, you have like the deserts or the polar regions, you will then not have the same intensity of vegetation. So when you're looking at distribution, right, one of the key things that we will be looking at is, of course, using choropleth maps like this to show you trends and patterns of where some of these vegetations can be found, or where some of this type of rainforests or this type of climates can be found as well. So this map here is found in page 102 and 103 of your textbook as well, right? So how does this work? They show you a couple of different types of forests. So for example, let's take a look at the tropical rainforest here. The tropical rainforest is this particular shade of green, right? This particular shade of green. So everything that's this green is actually tropical rainforest areas. So you are able to see that this chunk here, right, there's a chunk somewhere over here near Madagascar, and there's also a group over here in South Africa, right? As well as on the Central America and South American component, you also have the chunk of these tropical rainforests. So when you're looking at these kind of described questions, okay, you need to be able to look at a map like this and tell me where generally do you find these rainforests. Okay, are there some indicators of locality? Like, are there latitude lines that are given to you? Are there continent names that you can use? Are there country names that you can use? And that will allow you to show where you can find this particular type of vegetation. So, for example, for tropical rainforest, right, you can see that in the map there are latitudes given to us. You have the equator, Tropic of Cancer, and Tropic of Capricorn. And if you look at it very carefully, the main chunk of your tropical rainforest is found here between these two big latitudes, the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. So that will come in handy for you when you're doing a describe question. Okay. We will be doing a booster pack for describing questions to practice more on this, as well as in your assignment, your chapter assignment. So we will talk more about that in that particular when we come to that. Okay. So please remember, these are your climatic zones that the Earth is divided into, right? We have the tropical equatorial climate, we have the polar climate, which is near the poles, and you have the temperate climate, which generally is the moments where you do see the four seasons. Okay. Now, what are the areas on the latitudes that we can use when we are describing distribution of these kind of things on Earth? Okay, the main one is of course the equator, followed by the two buddies, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Right, what are the other two? One is at the South Pole, Arctic Circle. Okay, sorry, at the North Pole, the Arctic Circle, and the other one is of course at the South Pole, the Antarctic Circle. Okay, so with these 5 latitude lines, you are generally able to give us a general trend of where you, in reference to these lines, are. We will find these few climatic zones as well. Okay, so this thing here, what you see here is a climograph. Okay, climograph. What does a climograph do? It displays two sets of weather information for you. Okay, they actually calculate the mean rainfall for the month as well as the mean temperature for the month of the location here. So they're able to give you mean rainfall from January to December, also mean temperature from January to December. Right, what is displayed is a line graph which represents your temperature, okay, and a bar graph that represents your rainfall. Now, the type of graph is fixed in a climograph. Your bar graph will always be used to represent the rainfall, and your line graph will always be used to represent your temperature. Okay, so with this, you can actually see what kind of rainfall you have, what kind of temperature you have on average, and then you can decide what kind of climate is dominant in this area. So when you're looking at tropical equatorial climate, what are some of the indicators that we have? Okay, first thing, rainfall is always high. Okay, annually it should be around 1,005 to 2,005 mm annually. So in this case here, they have a table, right? So if you can't really read off the scale, there's a rainfall scale here, or the points here, right? You can't really read it. You can always go back to your table itself. So if you add all the months, the mean rainfall for each month, you will get a total of about 2,165.9 mm, which fits very nicely into our range here. So rainfall confirmed, right? Likely to be tropical equatorial climate. What else do I do? Next step, let's take a look at your temperature. Okay, tropical equatorial like Singapore, generally high, about 26 degrees, or maybe slightly warmer as well. So when you look at the range, right, you realize that there are some months where it's really, really hot. Okay, the hottest months being May and June, right? May and June where you have 28.3 degrees, but then you have the very cool months as well. Okay, the coolest month being your December, which is 26.4 degrees only. So average, right? High temperature about 26 degrees. If you do an average, you will realize it does hover around that. In this particular case of this country here, which I believe is Singapore. Yeah, it is Singapore. It is slightly above 26, but it hovers around there. The other thing you can check is, of course, the range of temperature. What do we mean by range? What's the hottest in the year minus away what's the coolest months in the year, and you will see a very small variance only. So for tropical equatorial climate, right, because you have a lot of sun, you need to have a lot of rain, you're going to have high rainfall annually, you're going to have high temperature, and you're going to have low temperature range, because whichever month it is, it's going to be warm. Okay, so you think back to your own personal experience in Singapore. Is it always warm? Are there months where, hey, actually for the whole month, right, it's like winter. It's like 18, 19 degrees. Okay, even in the daytime, it's 18, 19 degrees. Right? That rarely happens because we are not temperate climate. Okay, we are tropical equatorial climate. Right? So you look at the range is very small, it's about 1.9 degrees only. Right? So yes, we have very small range and very high temperatures throughout the year. Right? So if we progress a little bit more and we move into tropical rainforest, where would you be able to then, looking at this figure 5.3 here, describe where do you find tropical rainforest? Okay, so I will not belabor this point here. You can take a minute, read the slides, but we will be looking at this in detail with the exercise. Now, in terms of characteristics of the tropical rainforest, right, color-wise, is dominantly green. Okay, that's something you need to know. However, in the rainforest, there are three layers. Okay, the forest is split into three distinct layers. There are certain structures into the layers, and there are certain unique things about the structure and shape of the trees within each layer here. Okay, what are the common baseline characteristics first before we move into the layers? Right, first and foremost, it is evergreen. So if you break down the word evergreen into its two component words, you will realize that it means that this place is always green in color, which means that the leaves are always green. They don't turn yellow together, and they don't drop together and you're left with just branches. Why? Because we do not have a winter season where the plants need to conserve water. Okay, so because it doesn't have that, all year round the plant realizes that I can be producing food all year round. I will not suddenly drop all my leaves. I will do it at a regular basis, okay, continuously, but at the same time I'll maintain green foliage all around all year round, so I can continue to grow and continue to manufacture food. Okay, because the conditions are favorable. Now, because of these wonderful conditions, you can grow all sorts of plants, and all sorts of plants do grow together in the tropical rainforest. There's a very large variety, okay, of plant species as a result of this. Okay, is there a dominant type of species that is more significant in tropical rainforest? No. Okay, so in a typical tropical rainforest, expect to see over 1,000 species within a 1 kilometer square unit of space, right? So that's really, really very, very much. Okay, now in terms of characteristics of tropical rainforest uh, plants, right, we are looking at 5 areas, like we mentioned at the beginning of the lesson, right? Overall structure, bark and branches, fruits and flowers, leaves, and finally roots. So these are how we can break down and do a description of the different characteristics of the tropical rainforest. So let's start with the first area here, where we're looking at diversity of plants. Okay, some of the common types of varieties that you actually have encountered with, right? You may not have encountered the plant itself, but you've encountered definitely the fruit. Okay, so tropical fruits, things like bananas, mangoes, these are trees that you find in the rainforest. Okay, other things like spices, your pepper, your cinnamon, things that you use in FCE for cooking, right? These are also things that are found in the rainforest. Okay, now why is it that we can have such variety, right? Very sweet bananas and at the same time very, very spicy pepper, because the rainforest itself is so exposed to the constant bombardment of sunlight and rain, so that the different varieties can all coexist in this area here, right? Finally, of course, you have vegetables and nuts, things that we eat very often, things like corn, pandan, they use to make drinks, make your pastries, as well as some of the Brazil nuts, walnuts, and some of the other nuts that exist in the rainforest. So, like we mentioned earlier, right, within a 10 kilometers square, no, 0.10, there's a 10, yeah, 0.01 kilometer square, which is about a football field size, okay, about 1 hectare, okay, you can have 300 different species. Okay, but in your temperate forest, temperate forest in UK would be like, oh, when you were young, you read about Little Red Riding Hood going to the forest to visit her grandma, which got eaten by the wolf, right? So that forest that Little Red Riding Hood walked through is a temperate forest. So the variety of species is about 10% to maybe 12% of what you will see in the tropical rainforest. Okay, now bear in mind this is not number of plants, this is variety of species. So you may see a lot of plants as well in the rainforest or in the temperate forest. However, please bear in mind that you will see the same plant repeat over and over again. Unlike in the rainforest, it doesn't repeat that much. So keep that in mind. So earlier on we talked about the three layers, right? So what are actually these three layers? Okay, so in the bottommost layer, the one that if you walk through the rainforest you interact with, that lowest layer below 10 meters, okay, about 15 meters, 0 to 15 meters in elevation, that will be your undergrowth layer. You'll find low shrubs and all in this undergrowth layer. Then in terms of height wise, between 15 meters to about 30 meters plus minus a little, that is your canopy layer. This is where you have taller trees, where the crown of these trees actually interlock. That's very important, okay? Interlock with one another and they form a layer, like suspension of a green layer in the sky. Okay, so if you've been to the treetop trail in I think MacRitchie, Pierce MacRitchie area, right, that is actually a canopy trail. Okay, where you're walking at the height of the canopy trees. Are there taller trees? Yes, there are some trees that burst beyond the canopy. They come out as the emergent layer. So these three trees are even taller than the canopy trees. They run almost up to 50 meters in a height, and they're ones who break through the canopy layer in search for more sunlight. Okay, why so? Because the canopy layer interlocks with one another. The crown, the top of the tree, actually interlocks with one another, and when that interlocking happens, right, there's no sunlight that can go down. So if you want more sunlight, either you join them and force your way through the canopy layer, or you grow higher than them. So you go through them and then you emerge above the canopy as the emergent layer. Okay, what is 50 meters then? 50 meters, okay, let's look at it. Typical classroom will be about 3.5 meters to 4 meters. So if you take it at, let's take it at 4 meters, right? 50 meters would mean that that is about 12 to 13 stories. Okay, so if you live on the 12th floor, when you look at your window, the same view will be the view that emergent tree crowns are. Okay, the top of the emergent trees is about there. Okay, so between a good 12 to maybe 20 story tall building, right? You can have a tree that's as tall as this. Okay, what about the next layer, the canopy layer? We're looking at trees that are about 20 to 30 meters. Okay, not so high, not so tall. 20 to 30 meters. Still, if you're looking at 4 meters being one level, that's a 5-story uh, building. Okay, the tree that's up to 5 stories. So if you look into the middle of your blocks between block E and block F, right, the trees in the middle, what would you classify them? Would you classify them as canopy trees, or you classify them as emergent trees? Right? Think about it. Where are the trees located? How high do are the crown or the tops of the trees? Are they at level 4? Are they actually above level 4? Right? Have you ever observed this before? If not, maybe at the end of today's lesson, you can go, or next tomorrow or the next day you're in school, right? You can go and take a look at the trees between block E and block F, between the Sec 1, Sec 2 block and the Sec 3 blocks, and try and imagine where would this kind of tropical tree be found. Would it be an emergent tree, or will it actually just be a canopy layer tree? And at the bottom, what do you see? Right, you will see your undergrowth layer, very very low shrubs, right? A lot of lianas, a lot of epiphytes, a lot of these vines that grow around. Okay, they try and twine up the tree, right? But they grow from the bottom up. Okay, epiphytes are plants which grow on trees as well. So you have your ferns, your epiphytes, and your lianas. Okay, what is the dominant feature here? Okay, actually the dominant feature is not something that is in your syllabus, right? It is a layer of rotting leaves. Okay, so if you walk through a forest area and you realize the ground, there's no grass. Okay, it seems to be all full of leaves, droppings, and whatnot you have, right? That means very likely you're walking through a tropical rainforest. Okay, what is this buttress roots? These are the roots of the very very tall trees for both the canopy as well as the emergent trees. We'll come back to these later. So buttress and lianas. Buttress are, of course, the big, tall roots. How big and tall can these be? The buttress roots can be taller than 2 meters. Okay, the fanning out of the buttress roots is to give more stability for the very, very tall trees. Okay, so this is important. This is what you will see at the canopy layer. And if you look very carefully as I zoom in, right, the floor is muddy, lah, right, and you do see dead leaves. Okay, similarly here you see that there's a lot of dead leaves here, right near the floor. There isn't grass. Okay, so when we think of a forest, right, I know in our mind we think it's natural. We think anything that's natural that's on the ground, you will be covered in lush grass. Actually, that's not true, lah. Okay. Now, this part here, you don't have to do this. This actually links back to, remember when we talked about the holiday homework, the Padlet. Okay, some of you have not completed the Padlet yet. Within the week, can you please try to go and complete the Padlet? Because we want to be able to come back to this part next week, and we look at what are the adaptations in the trees around your neighborhood, and are those trees then part of the tropical rainforest varieties. Okay, so there are some adaptations that these trees have in the tropical rainforest, and your holiday homework assignment, the Padlet, is designed to let you go and observe the trees around your neighborhood and take some photos of the leaves, the branch, the roots, as well as the overall tree outlook itself. So when we come back, we'll look through your submissions, and we will try and decipher whether these plants belong to the rainforest. Okay, so with that, I will stop here, right? If you do want to have a review, please move back in time and relook at whichever area you are concerned with. Okay, so I'll see you next lesson.